Before I start reading some of these allocates of people who knew Don, I'd just like to say that it was Don and Carol that really got Carmen and I started on moving up here, and so we always appreciate that, and we're looking really looking forward to many years of association. And we'll still have that. It's just not quite the form we expected. From Donna Whitten, Don's mom. I'm usually really good at this stuff. Farewell to my dear son Don. I remember him as a darling boy who could always make me laugh even when I should have been serious, especially when I was trying to discipline him. I would end up giving him a hug. Don had a favorite blanket which he loved, and when I tried to take it from him, he would have a fit. He loved the satin edge. I got so that every night I would cut off some of the blanket until it was gone. He made friends wherever he went. I'm lucky to have some of Don's beautiful artwork, which I treasure. My last recollection is when he was in Idaho celebrating my half-birthday in 2016. I was so delighted to see him and Carol there. It was a wonderful celebration. Don asked me if I had anything on my bucket list. When I told him I wanted to visit the Museum of the Fur Trade in Chadron, Nebraska, he told me he would drive to St. Louis and we would go there. We did, and it was 800 miles. We spent 4 wonderful days together, and I remember every minute of that trip. I see Don's girls on a regular basis. I see Bevan every year with her children, and Nora about every other year. Bevan and her family and Nora and I were at Don and Carol's house in 2015, just before Ivy Donna was born. I'm in touch with Don's sons on Instagram, where they show me their artistic flares. Stay happy, Don. You love your mother, Donna. This will probably be a little lighter for me. From Carlos Silva in Portugal. For those of you who follow the Etheric Warriors, this is an old friend. Don was a friend who helped me a lot. He encouraged and tried to get the best of me to shine through, just like I'm sure he did with a lot of people. More than a personal friend, Don was a living example, a light on this world. His boundless generosity, his kindness, his curious mind and adventurous spirit, his humor in the face of adversity, his humility, his faith, his courage. Wherever he is now, he continues to live in our hearts. I am touched by how the family and friends came together around Carol in strong support. I've only met the Crofts once, but I consider myself part of the family, so it was only natural to be concerned for Carol. She could not be in better hands, and I thank everyone for this. My heart goes out to all of you who miss him dearly. From Francisco Garcia Zubidiat in Catalonia. Don was a dear friend and teacher and mentor to me, a walking encyclopedia balanced with an amazing bag of adventures accumulated throughout his life, following his passions honestly and always with integrity. Such humble giant who never forced his way, never forced his views, but inspired me to come to my own realizations and grow through them. Always available to anyone, no matter how long and clogged his email inbox was from thousands of requests from people all over the world. At 70, he showed me the spirit of a child. After witnessing his stamina and drive on our boat trip, I admired him even more. I told him I wish I could be like that if I ever got to his age. This was driving a Zodiac, an open inflatable boat from Florida,
Key West.
from the Key West, down
Across
to
the
Belize, across past Cuba, down to Yucatan, down to Belize, to the Big Blue Hole, which they gifted with Orgonite, and back. Running without lights at night, stormy weather, and he's wondered why the Coast Guard pulled him over, because he looked like a drug runner. But they got him home because they were almost out of gas. I had to throw that in. But that's what, 800 miles one way? 1,500 miles round trip on the open ocean in an open boat?
Oh,
Swells 20, 30 feet high? This is a Gulf Stream. This is where people die. He chose a different way. Don and Carol's generosity came to my rescue at a time when I needed it most, and I'm ever grateful for such kindness and generosity they have always shown to me. What else can I say? The world would not be the same right now if it hadn't been for his determination to show that each and every one of us can make a positive impact on the world independently and with simple and elegant solutions, as he liked to point out. Another pearl of wisdom of the many he had was that he used to mention was, trouble is just another word for fun. He sure loved trouble. And parted, leaving the world a much better place than it was when he got here. Few can hope to have that reach. Hats off, partner. A great and noble soul. Love you. Sending all the love to Carol family and everyone who loved him too. From Dirk Verlist in Holland. Someday the world will look back upon this man with the greatest of praise. I'm glad to have known him and deeply grateful for all that he has taught me. His patience, generosity, and no-nonsense stood out for all to see. Never afraid to call a spade with the keenest of discernment. Thank you.
said to give those to you.
He made everybody feel special, which to me is the hallmark of a great soul. Farewell, my friend, you will be missed. From Jeff Miller in Philadelphia. When I first learned of Don Croft's passing, I caught myself admonishing him, thinking, well, paragliding is a very risky sport. Then I laughed as I realized that earth piping the underground base at Dulce, New Mexico is a much riskier sport than paragliding. And that is just one example of from Don's life, out of countless others. Gifting Pluto's Cave, gifting the Devil's Punch Bowl. There's a line in John Prine's In Spite of Ourselves that goes, he's got more balls than a big brass monkey. That was Don Croft. Back in the day I was reading The Adventures of Don and Carol Croft as they were being published and found them to be inspiring and also very funny. For me, Don's mixing of bravery and high adventure with offhanded witticisms and then segueing into dry commentary on excellent restaurants in the area, lifted it. Y'all should read that.
That was gone.
Yeah. Lifted it up to a level that one can only hope to emulate. And emulate him I did. Readers of my thread on Don's Etheric Warriors forum can confirm that I have lifted numerous aspects of his writing wholesale and made them my own, including speaking about difficult subjects via generalities, not listing one's detractors by name, and of course trying to mix bravery and high adventure with offhanded witticisms. In one of my posts about burgeoning salmon populations in the Pacific, I referenced them and their illuminist fish counter buddies. Someone on the forum whose name I unfortunately do not recall said it was the greatest Donism ever by anyone other than Don. I think they said that because the statement drives directly at the adversary, yet is also casual, offhanded, and humorous. It's foxhole humor, and that's tied up with the fact that Don named the forum Etheric Warriors. We all hope to make a mark while we are here to do something with our lives. Side by side with his wife Carol, Don Croft changed the world permanently for the better in numerous ways, while holding unfailingly to a course of service and humility. And he was firm in his position that he was not the head of the Orgonite movement, but rather that the movement should have no head at all, and thus could not be beheaded, which was more genius. He has passed on sadly and suddenly, and I am left here behind to keep on fighting the good fight with him as an example for me as he has ever been. Don Croft was simply incomparable. And I'm proud not only to have known him, but to have counted him among my friends. If you are so moved, please consider sending what you can to Don's wife Carol to help defray the significant cost of Don's final medical bills and funeral arrangements. Jeff Miller, Philadelphia.
So I'm Carmen, and I have more to read. This one is from George and Frederick Rachel. I don't know how to say that. It says, "Farewell, gentle giant. Don, we thought you would be there forever. Perhaps you took too much for granted. When I recall you, I think most often of those email conversations we had during 2002 before we even started making Orgonite. You literally taught us everything we do today. Without you, there wouldn't be Orgonite Cloudbusters, HHGs, TBs, Orgon Zapper, SP Crystals, or Power Wands. There would not be such a thing as an Orgonite gifting network. Most likely, we'd still be swallowing unadulterated chemtrails and be hopelessly lost in a maze of DOR-based electromagnetic mind control fog. You were always extremely modest and humble, while keeping a very special sense of humor. You never became conceited about your role as the chief instigator of this whole thing that we call the Orgonite network. You didn't want to be seen as a guru or a leader, and to a point you were successful with that. There are now many people who make and use Orgonite and barely know about you. However, you were a leader, wanted or not, because you were leading by example. Integrity and truthfulness being the hallmarks of your character. You were not smooth or elegant, but rather crunchy in your directness. I remember what you said about your Neanderthal genes, imaginary or real. Definitely pre-Anunnaki and 100% human. You were not a schmuck. You once said that you were not too keen to be psychic in your lifetime, as everybody would become instantly psychic at the moment of death. Well, you know now if that is true. I imagine you soaring up there in those heights that you were instinctively drawn to, looking down on us with a mild chuckle. We shall remember you with joy and happiness in our hearts, grateful for the fact that we were allowed to know you and be inspired by you." And it's Frederick and George from Johannesburg, South Africa. This one is from Dooney and Steve Smith in Montana. "We have known Don for many years and have shared quite a few adventures with both Don and Carol. There are no words to express our sadness, but we are so glad to have had Don in our lives and in our hearts. He was a special person with a generous heart and a brilliant mind, which is an unusual combination. Don helped show us that there are things that ordinary folks can do to profoundly shift the energy dynamics on the planet with simple tools such as like Orgonite. That was very inspiring and encouraging in the face of these challenging days. Don and Carol have done a lot of work to heal the planet, and that legacy will live on forever. We love him and miss him always." This one is from Francie Stephan in Connecticut. "Don was a tall, gentle person with an extraordinarily rich inner life, and amazingly, his inner depth was matched by his outer ability to act on his knowledge and his love of adventure. He will be remembered for his impressive achievements in healing, both in physical self and also in caring for our planet and our communities. Yet I believe he will be most deeply missed for the extraordinary conversations he had by email or in person, and how he reached, enriched, and reassured so many lives. I first connected with Don by email in 2008, after the arrival of high-speed internet in our rural town. Previously, as I waited for that internet connection, I had compiled a handwritten list of all the questions I wanted to Google. It was a long list, and covered everything from the corruption in our town and state to pollution in our skies and protecting my family, and on to more esoteric questions about blue-colored energy that my acupuncturist couldn't or wouldn't answer. When I finally got my internet connection and I started my search, I spent hours and hours and months reading, often late into the night, which was tough as I had a very young child at the time. However, when I finally landed on the Etheric Warriors site and read about Orgonite and the myriad of topics Don so easily covered, I forwarded the link to my husband, told him I had finished reading, somebody doesn't like me, reading the internet, shut off my computer, and we started on a list of supplies that we needed to make our first Don Croft style cloudbuster. The fun started with the cloudbuster. Honeybees swarmed it in the snows of January. We were graced by black helicopter flybys, and we were watched by a magnificent stag that I thought I had imagined, but our neighbors commented on it also. When I emailed Don, our long-running dialogue became one of the most interesting conversations I had ever had. He truly was like a living encyclopedia, and he had an easy mastery of his knowledge that enabled him to draw connections and illustrate meaning in very complex topics and situations. I found the community brought together by Etheric Warriors to be made up of some of the most wonderful people I have ever met. Like myself, many others were seeing that things weren't right in the world, and yet we felt so isolated because no one else seemed to notice. It was such a profound help to connect with Don and his network of people who were also seeing and looking, and most importantly, working for positive changes. I participated in the Etheric Warriors chat for many years, and one of the sweetest things about Don is how he constantly professed his love and admiration for Carol. While it was such a shock to learn of Don's fatal flying accident, I feel a sense of peace for him when I reflect on all he accomplished and all the people he brought together. Somehow it seems right that he met his match with the mountains, the wild, and the wind, his own sense of adventure, but remained aloft from the pettiness and corruptions of the world he'd helped to heal. And with all my heart, from my whole family, thank you, Don. Francie.